Good afternoon. It's just a minute or two after 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. We are into the month of June, June 2nd. And I am Pastor Lou Kilgore. I make a plan to be here in this place, which is in Franklin Lakes at a physical location for the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. I'm pastor here at the church. I have an office here at the church, which has a couple of chairs in it. I am not in my office at the present moment. I've relocated here so that I can have conversations with you and with others live streamed and available at a convenient time when you can watch. Purpose of my time and of the next 15 or so minutes is specifically to do a check-in. To check in to see how you're doing. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be checking on you. I'm asking the questions. It's what a pastor often asks, with some earnestness. How are you doing? How is life unfolding? How's the pathway for you? And I ask it with genuine concern, knowing that you can't answer, not now, not to me, but that you will if you need to communicate to me, but that you might answer to yourself. You might be taking advantage of the conversation one way as it is and sort of filling in your side of it, which might not be happening if I wasn't asking. And my question is, how are you doing? How are we doing? And I try to model for you ways to answer that question by trying to include myself. How am I doing? How are we, the collective we, doing in the world in which we live, in the times that we're living through, noting some of the holidays and the cycle of life that's happening around us and reflecting on it. So welcome. Welcome to being here. I'm glad you tuned in. I'm glad you're tuning in, and I hope you'll stay for the 15 minutes of reflection. And maybe even where you are, answer the question, how are you? And maybe the conversation might help you to answer. We don't always know how we are. If we're completely honest, we don't. At least I don't. If I take time and I take a moment and I breathe, and I think about what's going on around me, and I think about what's on my mind, and I think about what's making me happy and what's worrying me, sometimes it surprises me where I come out. I might be thinking I'm having a great day, but as I take stock, I'm realizing that I'm pushing down and away some very troubling things because I don't really know how to deal with them. So I kind of come to terms with the fact that, maybe right now the moments aren't as great as I was pretending they were. And it happens in the reverse too. Sometimes I'm thinking, oh, this day, miserable day, this time, this period of my life. And then I take stock and I find out, I've been unnecessarily negative about what's happening in my life and the time in which I'm living or the events that are unfolding. And I'm reflecting on the things that I worried about yesterday, which got resolved. And as soon as they got resolved, they got forgotten about. And I didn't tap into the energy of those resolutions to help me to then think about today's matters. So welcome to the season after Pentecost. It's like now is the time that we try as best we can with what we've learned and what we've heard and what we trust about God to chart a life that walks a path with God. To walk a path with God, to be in a process with God. And how are you doing? It's funny, my mind went blank for a few moments there about what I was thinking about talking about, and this would have been a time when I would have just shifted the conversation back to you to say, and what about you? Some of you know I'm going to be going in the hospital tomorrow. I'll be facing a surgery. It's not a life-threatening surgery. And that is what it is. People have asked me, are you nervous? I don't think I am. I don't know. I get nervous, but I'm not nervous about that. I'm hopeful for the doctor. I want the doctor to do a good job. I do. I want the surgeon to be good, and I want the recovery to be clean. I don't want any unnecessary infections, as you could imagine. I would want that, and anybody would want that for me, I hope. I appreciate those of you who knew about it, who were praying for me and ready to welcome me back into the regular process of my life. I will not be here tomorrow. Actually, at this time tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be underway already. I'll be in the operating room, and things will be, I think it's not a long surgery either, so maybe they'll be more than, well, they'll be more than started anyway. So, what do you think about then on days like today? There are several things that I'm very excited about today, things that got resolved that I was worried wouldn't get resolved. A couple of things have popped up that I didn't know I was going to face today, none of which has anything to do with my events tomorrow. But isn't that the way life is? Isn't that the way life is? The highs and the lows, the ups and the downs, they come and they go, and the mature person in life learns to encounter the lows and anticipate that this too will pass. And even in the highest of the highs, not to assume this is the way life will be as we go forward. This is the life of faith. In the Bible study this morning from the 14th Psalm, I carry these lessons that are uncovered in these Psalms, I carry around with me. And I had a new level of understanding that there's some pathway of life. Jesus talked about full life, to live life to its fullest. That doesn't mean you're happy all the time. It doesn't mean things go wonderfully. It just means to live a full life. In order to live a full life, you could not just simply ride on your intuitions and do what comes naturally to human beings. Just hard work will not get you a full life. Just being smart and getting a good education will not give you a full life. And the psalmist claims, he actually says, that until you have received some guidance from God, you won't get it. You won't understand the secret to a full life. And of course, you can go and watch on this very channel what that is. The word that I love is loving kindness, to live and to set in your life a goal of being a loving kindness person. I think it's the same as compassion. To demonstrate loving kindness for another human being. And that's not just a moral thing, like, oh, that makes you a good person. That doesn't even summarize it. Because to not do that doesn't make you a bad person. It just, in the biblical terms, makes you a fool. A fool in the sense of smart, intelligent, wealthy, whatever, but foolish. Wisdom, righteousness, is to live with the gift of loving kindness. And to hear that from God, to know that loving kindness from God. I stand in the pulpit from time to time and I tell people that the secret to living life is to begin first with trusting that God loves you and that God seeks and desires to be kind and gracious unto you. Resolving that is the beginning step, that God loves you. And you can't do anything to change that, because that's the loving, kind nature of God toward you and towards all people in the world. God is loving kindness. And once we see it, once we understand it, and our guilty, blaming consciousness are silenced so that we can actually hear that word or be instructed by that word from God, then we are on the pathway to living our lives fully, because now we're set free to be in a loving, kind way to another person. My wife sent me the story about an imam, I think in Boston, who posted in the New York Times today about the experience that happened, I guess, in the last couple of days. That as an imam, he was there in the mosque, and there was a knock at the door, and a young woman came in, a very young woman came in, and he wasn't dressed in his imam garb, and so she asked, "Are you the imam here?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And so she handed him an envelope, and in it there was $80. And she said, "I'm wondering if you will have connections to be able to get this $80 somehow to a person who lives in Palestine, to anyone, to get this money to Palestine among the people who are struggling and suffering today in the conflict between Israel." And she said, "And can you send the message that this $80 is from a young Jewish woman in Chicago who is praying for them and hoping for the Palestinian people, that they will be loved and know that they're cared for." And emphasize, "I am a young Jewish woman who has been babysitting for several weeks to save up this money to send it to them for relief." Loving kindness. The depth of wisdom in the life of a young woman. A life that evil people cannot touch. A strength that comes from living life according to the law of God, because the law of God is loving kindness. I'm going to keep repeating that word because it's religious enough to know that we're talking about religion and faith and belief in God, but it's also practical enough that we know what it means. Several years ago, I changed the words that I use in the benediction of the close of a gathering of my church. And I changed to the one that's commonly used, but not by everyone. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the face of God shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May God, and this is it, may God be kind and gracious unto you and to everyone that you know and love. May God be kind and gracious unto those who do not know God or who think that no one cares about them or loves them. May God be kind and gracious to the world and teach us how to be kind and gracious to one another. It's not legalism. It's not a law in the sense that laws come that say, do not steal, do not do this, do not do that. It's not like that. It's of a very different nature of the law of God, which is the heart of God. It's the part that the psalmist says, I meditate on the law of God, and it is beautiful. It is wondrous in all of its ways. Loving kindness. That's what came in the package of Jesus from the realm of God's heart. Loving kindness. Nothing but loving kindness. To challenge the world, to challenge the haters, to challenge the strivers and the people who are the controllers and the grabbers and the people who live their lives foolishly in this world. Loving kindness is the key. And it's not just something that you can do on your own. You need to meditate on and absorb the word from God, which demonstrates God's loving kindness to you. This is why I think even in Christian circles among fundamentalists, you have to believe in Jesus Christ. Well, you have to believe and accept and trust Jesus' loving kindness toward you. Because without the movement of God in an engagement of loving kindness towards us, we're lost. We don't have that in our gene structure. We don't. The human being is not given to selfless loving kindness at all. It's in response to what God does that we can even begin to understand it and to see it and to then live it. This is the post-Pentecost message. This is our how then shall we live? Because that's the question of the season now. From Pentecost, the launch of the church, into the whole unfolding of the church. And if you look at the experience of the communities of Christian churches around the world, you will find that churches wandered far and away from the message of God's loving kindness to the human race. They have, but not all of them. Not all of us. The world is filled with the message of God, the message that comes to us and invites us, even sometimes in our worst experiences of need, to show loving kindness to someone, to demonstrate it with sometimes little or no resources. Babysitting for 5 weeks to save up $80, to send to Palestine through an imam from a young Jewish woman with a message that says, we love you and we care about you. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. It's the power of God. It's the power of God's loving kindness towards us as human beings. That's what transformed Peter's life. What transformed Peter's life was the full demonstration of the loving, accepting, forgiving kindness of Jesus. When in his worst moments of self-protection and greed and power lust, Jesus loved him, was kind to him, forgave him, and called him to be an example of living loving kindness in the light of God's grace. That's my chat for today, my friends. It's my hope, my inspiration, the power of God at work in me and in you. It's what you deliver to me. It's what I deliver to you. When God speaks, no one can hold it back from us. May God's power and God's Spirit open our ears and our eyes to see it, that we might live full lives, no matter what the circumstances. May God's blessing be upon you today, my friends, and may God's loving kindness extend even more to you than it already has, that you might be inspired for living life to the fullest. God bless you. I will see you in this format next Monday afternoon. And that's provided my recovery goes as I hope it does. You might get word that I'm canceling on Monday if I'm not out of bed yet and able to move around and to be here. But you'll know. I'll send you word about the results, and so you could be praying for me, and I'll be praying for you too. God bless you, my friends. I'll talk to you soon.